This week's podcast is going to be something that I think will be entertaining, devastating, fun and exciting. Glenn has come into Life of Body Science, a couple of months ago, mate. You sort of hit you've been around for a while, but it came under my radar in a big way. Glenn Compain is a man who has led voluntary aid workers in Uganda, worked with orphans, child soldiers. He's all about men talking about their shit now. He's got some stories that are going to change your life. How are you, mate?
Good, thank you for having me.
Mate, I'm really stoked you're on board. What are some of the things you reckon we might touch on today?
We could touch on, my work in Uganda, East Africa as a teenager. I was stricken as a child with asthma, chronic asthma, and sport, venture into some sport.
Yep, nice. He's also left out that he is a copper, so he's got some good stories there as well. And you do a lot of work with troubled youth as well, don't you?
I do. I've probably ever since I was a teenager myself. I didn't grow up, with, I guess, a whole lot of role models and whatnot. I'm from Kelston, West Auckland, and we basically, had to kind of find things to do. So a lot of rock throwing, stone fights, a lot of swimming in the creek and sort of find your own way through things. Yeah, I just... I guess I was on the street a lot and I saw the plight of other people that were really on the street. So we hung out on the street as kids. Yeah. But when you see people who actually have a blanket on the concrete, and have their hand out for food, I saw a lot of that as a kid, and that kind of, I guess, tweaked the heartstrings into wanting to work with people who are vulnerable.
Wow, that's amazing, mate. Let's rip in and hear your story.
Welcome to the Body Science Podcast. As always, the information contained in this podcast is for the information purposes only and is not designed to diagnose or be prescriptive to treat, prevent or manage any injury, disease or other health-related condition.
Welcome to Body Science HQ, the world of fit, happy and healthy. And today, Glenn Compain is in the house. How are you, man?
I'm good, thank you.
That was a pretty interesting little intro we did there. Mate, let's dig straight into it. Let's do a bit of bio on you, because I look at your bio and I go, where do I start? You've written a book, Streetwise Parenting. You've worked with youth groups. You're working in police. You've been in police in New Zealand. But let's hear the real story from you, because the 10 minutes we had before we started this podcast, I wish I was on air. I really hope we can reproduce that.
Yeah, I guess my real story, I'm the youngest of four boys. My dad hails from Fiji Islands, and my grandmother from Samoa. And I guess our family, the Compain family, is like a love story. My great grandfather was in the US Marines, and he was based in Samoa. In those days, a Samoan couldn't marry an African American or a Black American or Maori or black person in those days. So my great grandfather had to elope to Samoa, and therefore they had my grandmother in Samoa. So it's a bit of a romantic story.
I like that.
And then my nana married my grandfather, who's French, a full Frenchman, and the Compain or Compain, and then they married and had my father in Fiji. My father then came to New Zealand, married my mother, who's New Zealand Māori. So a lot of people call me United Nations.
You're not wrong.
But I guess...
Which footy jersey are you putting on these days?
Yeah, well, my sons have a bit of a choice. Yeah. But I guess, in our culture, or the cultures that I've raised with, it's important to always acknowledge your parents. Mm-hmm. So that's why I always give that acknowledgement of my grandparents and my mum and dad. And that's something, I guess, a value that's been instilled by me, by my grandmother, who I was raised by at the age of 10. I couldn't be controlled at school. I was one of those kids, when the teacher's always yelling at the kid, I'd be up on the roof of the school. I don't know what it was, but I just had a whole lot of energy and I couldn't stand being in the classroom. I still can't. Even in, my current job, if I'm in a classroom sitting, I'm the worst person. I'll harass everybody and, make a pain of myself. But I think I get bored easily. So in primary school, I'd get bored. Which was, I guess the teachers would take as being disruptive. Yep. I was always getting the cane and getting the strap. So I was always off to the principal you go, 6 of the best. And I'd, meander to the principal and try and put books down the back of my pants, waiting for that strap, 6 of the best. So I kind of didn't like school, didn't want to be at school. didn't like the teachers, didn't like getting strapped. And that sort of, I guess, drifted me towards the, what I call the hearing impaired. In those days was the deaf kids. The deaf kids had their own unit, the hearing impaired.
Yep.
So I began to kind of hang out with them, and I wondered what they were doing with their fingers. And so they taught me sign language, as well as I would be their bodyguard. So I learned that I had a talent as a kid, and that was to I started protecting all the kids that were bullied. So if anyone was bullied, they'd come to me. We didn't have a lot of food in our house, so I used to charge them, look, if I look after you this week, then that's lunch.
Yeah, nice.
Kind of a bit of entrepreneur when I was young.
Exactly.
But just had I started protecting people, and I guess if there was a fight, I'd be the first one in there to break it up.
Yeah, okay.
I wasn't a bully, but I was probably a bully to the bullies. Anyone that was bullied, I'd say, who was it? They'd say that's that person. So I'd go over to him and just have one-on-one and do my best to take him out. So I had a strong sense of justice as a kid. Mm-hmm. And coupled with the asthma, so I had chronic asthma, it was kind of like, well, I'm trying to protect people, but I'm very small. I was a very small child. I don't know what happened.
Really?
Yeah, I was tiny. I was very tiny, a tiny child.
Is that right?
Short. Yep.
How tall are you now?
I'm not sure, probably 6'1" or 6'2".
Yeah.
But I was 5'10" at 18. So I was very small. No, that's what I think is in basketball terms.
Yeah.
I actually went to America at the age of 17 and played basketball in Oakland, California.
Okay.
And that's when I grew between the age of 17 and 18. I went from 5'10" to 6'1". I don't know what it was, something in the burgers.
Yeah, nice. There's nice Georgia burgers over there too, just quietly. So, mate, what led you on to become a volunteer aid worker in Uganda? Because you're playing basketball in America at the time.
I was playing basketball in America. It was a very Richmond, California. My cousins will be hearing this, but I'm pretty sure they'll be cool with it. But we had 15 guns between us. Not us, but between them. There were 3 of them. It's a gun culture in America. So everyone has guns, like you go to someone else's house and they'd be pulling out their shotguns that they just bought down the road. So it was not only with the gun culture, it was very hip hop driven. So Auckland, at the time, showing my age, was Tupac, had come out.
Yep.
MC Hammer was beefing with Bobby Brown, and MC Hammer lived in Auckland. But it was a real strong music culture. And a lot of the gangster rap began to come out. So it was kind of like a real angst environment for a teenager in California. But my thing was basketball. So I just loved playing. I trialed out for the varsity squad, which is like your 12th grade squad for El Cerrito High School. And I made the cut, which I was so pleased to do because I was just a kid out in New Zealand, and these guys are, for example, Michael Jordan was cut from the varsity squad. That gives you an idea of how competitive it is. So I made the squad, but one thing that I couldn't, I guess, move away from was the years preceding. So I guess from the age of 10 up until my time in America, I started abusing substances. Anything that could kind of get you out of normal, I would try. And with that, I guess I had a whole lot of behavioral, like I said, at school, I had a whole lot of I couldn't really sustain relationships. I felt that if someone was trying to get close to me, it was like a threat. And I think that was because, I grew up, we had quite having 3 older brothers. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of violence, and that kind of made me distrust people. I would often not trust the people that I was with, even though they were probably there to help me. And that ended up in Auckland, just drinking a lot, not having discipline, not having really good mentors, not having support. I didn't have real family support there. And so although my basketball was going good, but my outside life as a 17-year-old, it was just crazy. I didn't have any peace. I didn't have any, like I said, I didn't have discipline. I had no support. And so I didn't last long in California. I made the squad, and they actually went on to win the California Championship.
Yeah, nice.
So we had some intense games. It was wonderful. I tend to have a lot of, especially at that time, dreams, real vision, impactful dreams. And I remember at that time, I had this dream where I felt that if I didn't leave California, something would happen. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I actually had a dream where I heard, which I believe now to be the man upstairs, say to me, you're going to go back to New Zealand and you're going to go to Africa. And you're gonna turn your whole thing around and go to Africa. And so I'm in California, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just had this dream, and I didn't know who God was. I mean, I didn't know. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't raised in the church. My parents are not religious. I didn't know what this voice was, or if this dream was even real. But I thought, well, if it is real, and I can go to Africa. So I took it, So I booked my plane back to New Zealand. Booked my plane back to New Zealand. I don't know how, but I ended up going to a church months later. And when I went to this church, people were putting their names in a hat and passing it around. So as a joke, I put my name in it. A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call, and someone says, "Hey, congratulations." I said, "Why?" He said, "You're going to Antwerp." I said, "Why am I going to Antwerp?" He said, "You put your name in a hat in church, and we've chosen some young people, and we're going to send you to Antwerp." I said, I think I swore at her. I said, which is pretty bad, I said, "Look, I don't want to go to Antwerp. I want to go to Africa." Because, she didn't know I had that dream.
Yeah.
So I said, "Nah, thanks. You got the wrong guy." And then I hung up the phone in those days.
Yeah.
And then I just said, I kind of, was like a thought. I said, well, who, Mr. God, whoever, well, whatever, if you're real, then we'd be going to Africa. And I left America and my basketball dream, my hoop dream, because I thought you'd said Africa. So what's the deal? So I started giving the man a serve, And I said, you gotta make it, you gotta switch it up, off sacrifice. Here's me.
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm ready to go to Africa. And I left it, didn't think about it anymore, but I was a bit pissed off, because I'd kind of come all the way back based on this feeling. A week later, I get a phone call. "Hey, Glenn, we've changed we're not going to Antwerp, we're going to Uganda." And I said, "I'm in."
And you're 19 at this stage?
Well, I was 19, yeah. I was 19.
Wow.
And Uganda, yeah, that was just flying there was fun, because we went to Singapore in a nice hotel, and I had no idea what I was really doing. I didn't even really believe in the church that had sent me. I didn't even really know.
Yeah.
To me, it was just a trip. I was just going to have a trip.
Yeah.
Going to see Africa, and didn't care really what their intention was. Because I'm 19. I'm selfish. I just want to see things. I didn't know about anything other than just having a good time, especially from California.
Yeah.
So I go to Singapore. It's really lovely. And then we fly into Uganda, and you get out of the plane, you see the poverty, and you see the deprivation. We'd had a glimpse of it in Bombay, which I think is now called Mumbai. So we'd had a glimpse of that because you had to get to India to get to Africa. But I'd say within the first hour of being in Uganda, I was broken, man. I was a broken mess. Within
an hour?
Within just seeing... people walking on all fours, born with their feet the other way, and that was so common there.
Is that right?
Lepers sitting on the side of the road, their nose half hanging off their ears. It was just something out of a horror movie.
Yeah. That
really. I then lived there for a year and a half, working in Uganda. So after the first day broke me. After a year and a half, I kind of. I don't know, man. I just, we have westernized world. We have the Western world and we have that world. And I kind of just embrace the fact that I'm here to just serve. And it changed my values and my thinking. I stopped thinking about me. It wasn't no longer about just me. I'm going to go to America, make a lot of money, leave, maybe get a job and set myself up and give myself a big home, maybe buy a home for my kids and blah, blah, blah. That was what I was told life was about, but I'm not saying it isn't. But when you see, for example, I walked into an orphans babies home, and I walked into the home and there were 100 babies in cots. And because they were short on the nuns, there was normally only one nun that would walk around and care for the babies. So the ones that could get out of the cot, so the toddlers, to feed them, they'd cook this big thing called ugali, which is like banana or porsche, and they would just pour it out onto the floor. And the kids that could get out of their cots and walk over would just come and eat from.
Is that right?
From the pile of food that had been cooked. The babies that couldn't get out, and if they hadn't been touched over a certain amount of days, they were dying. So there wasn't, because a baby needs to be touched.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it needs to be
Absolutely.
touched. Otherwise, they die through lack of touch. So there were dead babies I'd walking around. There were dead babies there. And there's only one nun, so you just like, oh my gosh, these people have real problems, there's real issues here, and that's just part of my African experience. But that changed me to the point where it's as if I was there yesterday. That's how I live now, and I've been out of Africa 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I can only assume what you went through working a year and a half. You said.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that your initial engagement? Was how long? Like when you first went over there, was it you going for a month, 2 months?
No, it was for 2 years.
It was for 2 years, was it? Yeah. Okay.
That was the length.
Did you make change when you were there?
I think so, because we actually work with different communities in Uganda. We initially went to Latta. Latta is the north of Uganda. It's the home of Aboti. So Aboti was the president of Uganda and went to visit the Queen, and actually Idi Amin came in and took over the country at that time. So Idi Amin went up to Latta specifically to destroy to kill all the men and the women, to kill as many of that tribe as he could. And they have a saying, because the Nile River runs through, and there's lots of rivers in that part of the world, and they say in the time of Idi Amin's coup that the Nile fish, which is quite a big fish, and the crocodiles were exorbitantly bigger because he would throw, Amin's soldiers were throwing Aboti's people into the rivers. So it's a really, so I actually slept on the floor in a classroom floor where it had the bloodstains of one of the servants who had been shot by Amin's soldiers. So I slept where he had been killed, and the bloodstains were still there. And that's the type of, I guess, conflict that I'd never known in New Zealand. You don't get taught it. I heard about Idi Amin and how he there's movies on him, and he was a horrible, horrible man, dictator. You'd go to people's homes, older gentlemen. At the time I was only 20, so I'd go into homes of men who are my age now, and they'd have pictures of the current president, who was Museveni, Yoweri Museveni. But then you'd look behind the picture and it'd be Idi Amin. So a lot of them were still loyal to Amin. And so, yeah, it's like there's still a lot of, there's just stuff that you don't think of when you're living here, in the Western world.
I can only imagine. And that's not even talking about what happens in the day-to-day life of people outside of those two areas.
Yeah.
Mate, let's step forward. So you've done your time as an aid worker, and it's changed your life, and that's what sets you up to be the human you are today.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And do you want to touch on some of the great things you are doing now? Because I think people need to really understand what you do.
Well, I guess from Uganda, I had to decide when I came back to New Zealand. I was kind of lost for a good 8 years. For 8 years, I suffered from, I think, what would be now known as PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I had reverse culture shock, which is when you go from a civil war into normal living. It's like you can't get used to. So funny story, my wife will tell people, and I'm not really proud about it, but I couldn't go number twos in the toilet for months. Like I think she said probably 6 months to a year.
Is that right?
Yeah, I couldn't use a regular toilet because in the bush up in Uganda, it's long drops, It's always long drops, so you're squatting over a hole in the ground, and you're always scared to go in Uganda to go toilet because the long drops are man-made. So it's basically they dig a massive hole, and then they put bamboo reeds and stuff over the top of it, and then they pack it with mud. but they leave a small little hole, for you to do your business. And then they put a little thatched. So often people would walk in there and the thing would collapse and you die.
Wow.
And so it's the most horrible thing going to when you go in those days. I'm sure it's still in some villages, but for some reason I wouldn't wear shoes when I came back to New Zealand. So it'd be middle of winter, 5 degrees, and I just had bare feet. I couldn't have a bank card, or I didn't want money. I didn't buy myself anything. I kind of scoffed at the house that my parents had. I'd rather probably sleep down in the garage, and a lot of times I just slept on the floor because I just felt that was where I didn't want to lose what I lost, what I learnt, and at the same time I felt I didn't deserve it. And I don't know, I guess a lot people have been in those situations. They may be different, but that's just how I responded. I just felt unworthy to have all the stuff, like to turn on the tap and have a drink of water, without having to travel miles and miles to pump it and then carry it on jerry can. And so I think that was just a short time. But then I think I was grieving for the people there, but it came to a point where I had to stop because I thought, you know what, this is not helping me. It's not helping anybody. Everything I've learnt, it's not being translated into something. And so probably after, I would say 3 or 4 years, I was house painting with my brother, I'd be and just my mind would be elsewhere. I then snapped back into, well, I've got to get back into youth work. So I started working at a youth facility, and I would teach youth gang members. So youth gang members who were trying to get out of the gang. As a tutor, I would teach them careers. Like, you're really good at burglarizing, you're really good at standing over people, and you're really good at drug dealing, but you have a talent, but let's flip it around and let's try and make it, you're good at sales.
Yeah, exactly.
You're great at sales. If they were a burglar, well, they were going into people's homes, I said, man, you actually know what a safe house is, and can we look at going into security or being a locksmith, or how to get into people's environments, but you'd also know how to safeguard them.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd kind of flip it around, talk to these guys. As I was talking to them, a lot of them were doing crimes, like serious crimes, aggravated robberies. I'd often have half the class because most of them were in lockup. And half of them would be grievous bodily harm charges. So not just a punch to the head, it was everything else, like damaging people.
Yep.
And these were big kids, these are 15-year-olds who are bigger than you and I, And so I began to have an interest in, why are they committing these crimes? And I realized that there were certain factors as to why they were deciding to do what they were doing. Poverty. They were all living in like really bad places, really bad homes, no money. Like there'd be one household with 20 people living in it.
Wow.
That's like nothing. It was nothing. So there was no wallpaper, no carpet. There was no regular food. All the food they were eating were all offcuts, like lamb flaps and things like that, because that's all they could afford. Pig feet, pig ears, pig trotters. And, that then made me understand, well, heck, these kids are frustrated, These are 15-year-old kids who have to be the taxi for their family, have to assume responsibilities that they probably are not ready for.
Yep.
So 12 years old, they're driving to pick up dad from work to take him to his second and third job, when they don't have a license. So I just started to see, these factors that, start to make kids make bad decisions. And as much as I was trying to give them the good oil, they still go back to that environment, So I started to, I guess, have an interest in how can I help on a deeper level. And I looked at my job. I was a painter. I was also I'd done storeman work in a factory, driving forklifts and moving product. And nothing really excited me because, like I said, I get bored. So I thought, I'll join the police force, because I get to drive, cars fast.
Yep.
I get some cool gear, and I can be in the office and be outside, and I can see the youth, but I can also go home for lunch, you know. And I just thought we had these ads on TV, and they're really exciting ads, you know, talking to homeless people on the ads, chasing burglars. And because as a young person, I always wanted to get the bad guy, I had the strong sense of justice. It kind of all, you know, being in Africa, being like in a militarized environment, there was always the Ugandan soldiers. I thought, man, you know, there's something about order in a civil conflict situation. The Ugandan soldiers were so impressive. Like, I've never seen physicality like the Ugandan soldiers. You know, these are guys who, they don't have bench presses and that, but they will train every day. They will be lifting. They'll lift anything. They'll get the axles out of the Tata. There's always Tata lorries back then, and they'd be, you know, bench pressing axles and lifting engine blocks because they're in the bush. You know, so they just had the most amazing physiques. And I thought, man, one day I could look like that. You know, I have to get bigger and I don't know, just all the things that appeal to you as a, you know, now a 23-year-old, because I was in Uganda 2 years. I just started to, I guess, get a calling. I felt, again, like this desire to go this way. The problem was my maths is shit. I got marks for putting my name on my high school certificate, and then I walked out. So you had to have your maths, and I thought, well, I'm never going to pass, you know. I'll pass the fitness, but I won't pass the maths. My English was good. I decided to get a tutor. I got a tutor, you know, for a few months. And then I rocked on up to the police test. In those days, it was like 1 out of 60 passed. It was a very high failure rate. And they'd tell you at the end of it, they'd just call your name out and say, you failed. You know,
Wow.
These are the guys that failed and the girls that failed. And they call your name out.
Wow.
Man, I was sweating. I was sitting in the car, I didn't want to go, you know, and I was thinking, no, I can't do it. I'm going to fail. But again, I just thought of the stuff that I'd seen in Africa, and I thought, well, maybe this is a way that I can be a police officer, and then eventually I can start projects. Eventually I could use my knowledge. And so that was the hope and the faith, I guess, that I had in what I'd seen. And then, yeah, I passed that day, joined the police in 1998, and then did 2 years on the front line. Again, I was kind of used to the stuff that I was seeing, you know, all the 111 New Zealand, 000 here, used to domestics, used to fighting, so I was never overwhelmed. And plus I'd been in Africa, you know, I was like...
Yeah, you'd seen it there.
Yeah. And that's when I thought, after 2 years, okay, this is the time that I start a project. And I was able to get a role looking after West Auckland, which is quite a large area. And my mandate was domestic violence, road trauma, youth gangs, recruitment, and victim support.
That's a portfolio.
Yeah. And that's when I, you know, started doing projects. Started the first Pacific Island Victim Support Group for the New Zealand Police, helped pioneer the Pacific Wardens, which is your people who want to participate with the police and help with security. So they become wardens of the community, give them uniform and assist them. And so they're the eyes and ears of the community. Also set up with Sir Michael Jones, the famous All Black, good friend. We set up a trust called the Village Community Services Trust. And that mentors over 800 kids every day. It's also a food bank now. Yeah. And we just
800 kids a day.
Yeah, 800 kids a day. They have a massive food bank now that feeds the community, you know, just amazing. But it all started off with, you know, just that desire to help, not really knowing how to do it.
There's something in that.
Yeah, just doing it.
Yeah, there's no rules. Like you just
rules.
Get in there and do what you need to do.
That's it. Yeah. There's so much in having your why, you know. A lot of people talk about their why. My why is not just Uganda, but it's now homelessness. So with what I'm doing, I'm about to set up a homelessness food delivery. I'm going to make food at home with my kids so that they learn. They already know about having community conscience, but I want to start delivering hot food to the homeless down in Cooley and around various areas of the Broadbeach. So that's what I'm going to dedicate my Fridays to.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. If anyone out there needs to contact you or is interested in helping, how do they get you, mate?
Yeah. So I have a Facebook page called Hope Village. I don't know. Maybe you could throw up the link. And so that's how they can get hold of me. On there, they'll see various people that I've spoken to on the podcast. I'd love to have you on board. And just, they can reach out to me through that.
Yep.
And it's voluntary, obviously. It's just your own time. I have time one day a week where I can actually commit to that. But I believe that, if I'm not doing stuff like that, I kind of feel like I'm not really giving that experience, that much given, much required. A lot of people think of the Spider-Man movie, but before the Spider-Man movie, you have great responsibility, blah, blah, blah. But even way back since I was in Uganda, I feel that much. I've been given much, so much is required.
It's amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Hey team, it's Greg from Body Science here. The Hydroxyburn Shred is back on shelf. It's our new therapeutic, has all the taste. And if you're looking for a better thermogenic, we've really pushed for the pursuit of a better thermogenic. Full disclosure on the labelling. What do we mean? Caffeine levels have changed. We all know the rules have changed. The ingredients have changed. The claims have changed. We have a clean label with premium quality ingredients for you. So what does that mean for you? You can look at things like metabolism and energy, sugar metabolism, fat metabolism, cognitive function, thyroid, and just general health and well-being. And it's all on the label. If you're taking a fat burner now and it doesn't say it on the label, have a look at it and go, why? Get on board. So at what stage do you think, I'm going to become an author, I'm going to write a book?
Well, Uganda again. So I was in the police force for around 6 years. I was doing the mandated thing with DV, road fatalities, and recruitment and youth gangs. And I had started writing, I guess, since Uganda. I was always writing as a kid. So I've always been an English, A+ student throughout it wasn't always that way. It was touch and go because I was getting caned and strapped all the time. So my parents were pulling their hair out like, what are we going to do with this kid? And my mum happened to hand me a book by C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and Tales of Narnia. And so she handed me this book. So in the context, I was stricken with asthma. I couldn't run around and play rugby with the other kids. And I was struggling at school because me protecting other kids and helping other kids was seen as disobedience and whatnot.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But for me, it was protecting. So she gave me this book. So I fell in love with reading at a younger age, probably about 8 years old. And I idolized C.S. Lewis. I thought, this guy is amazing. I didn't realize that he's actually like a Christian and that Aslan represents Jesus. And I didn't know all that stuff. I just thought these are cool characters. And so I'd been writing songs. So I've actually recorded songs as well. I'm a recorded hip-hop artist in that time between Uganda and being in the police. I was known as the hip-hop cop in New Zealand. I'd go to schools and just bust out, some tracks, some songs in uniform. And so writing for me has kind of been like a natural thing. So this particular incident in Uganda, we were on safari in Kenya. I was at the front of about 8 people. The what do you call him? Not the scout, the person that looked after you had an elephant gun. He was Kenyan at the back. I don't know why he was at the back. We're walking around the trail and we're trying to look at some hippopotamus, on the river. And as we're going around the corner, this cute little, lady baboon just appears with the baby underneath.
A cute little baboon in Africa.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And we already knew that, the main 3 ways of dying in Uganda was hippo, because they kill a lot of people, baboon, and then rebels. And probably not in any particular order. But when I saw this cute little lady baboon, I was like, wow, she's got a little baby underneath and there's one on top. I was like, wow, man, it's right here. I could just about touch it. And the Kenyan guide said, don't move. So we just froze and he says, don't move, don't say anything. So I'm at the front, so I don't move. Then the second lady baboon, and then the third, fourth, after about 20, then I started to realize, okay, if there's women, where's the men? And that's while we were frozen. So they're walking past us, very wary, kind of scowling at us. And one of my friend behind me, she's always cheeky, you know, always trying to be the clown and always trying to get me into trouble. So as they're walking past, she thought it was fun to go, rah, you know, just to frighten.
You're kidding me.
No, but she's behind me. So she screamed out like, rah, and then all of a sudden these baboons started screaming and like you've never heard, the loudest screams. When that happened, you could see the bushes parting. You could hear to the right, to in front, and to behind. You could see literally like, like Jurassic Park when the dinosaurs come in to eat people, and you see the trees parting. That's what we saw. And they were the bulls. So the bulls are the they're coming to, well, who's messing with our woman and who's touching our babies. They burst through, me being at the front, one burst through the clearing and another one, and they were coming for me because I'm the biggest guy and I'm at the front. My friend Aseta had, I don't know what she was doing, I couldn't see her, but I was going to be it, you know, I was going to take the hit. And as they came through, claws out, fangs out, I knew, because I've been in Uganda a long time then. We were actually in Kenya because we got arrested and thrown out of Uganda. So I was like, I know all about what's going to happen here. So I literally closed my eyes and put my head down, just waiting to die, just waiting to get.
Wow.
You can't do anything. Like, you can't run.
Yeah, no.
I don't know why, but as I closed my eyes and I was just like, it's over. My life flashed before my eyes, like literally. It flashed before my eyes. I saw everything that I'd ever done in an instant. I saw everything that I'd done in public, anything I'd done in private, anything I'd done in my mind. And then right at the end of it, I had this, and this is in a split second, I had this overwhelming, sad feeling. I'm like, man, I have just shat on my life. I have not done anything. And I'm 20. I thought, you know, everything that I've done is not going to really stand for anything. It hasn't helped anyone. I was selfish, you know. I was just having a good time, you know. It was all about me. And then I just kind of closed my eyes, and in that flash, I thought about, if only I could have it back again. You know, I'm about to die, but if only I could have another crack, another chance. And I could smell the breath of the baboon. So he was right here. Why didn't? Because they'll just rip your head off. You know, they can just bite your face off. I think a baboon's like 3 to 6 times the strength of one man. They could just tear you apart. And for some reason he didn't, but I said to myself, if you give me another chance, because I'd already started to believe in the man upstairs by then, I thought, well, I'll stop pissing around. I'll stop shitting around, you know. If you give me another chance, I'll actually do some stuff. And I opened my eyes and they were backing away. They were just backing away with the troop and looking at me like, you're lucky, son. You know, this is your lucky day. And that, I don't know how many people have had that experience where they've actually survived the baboon. Maybe that's what they do. I don't know. But for me, I had another chance. So I wrote that in a one-pager. I can email it to you, or you can have that. And it's called Flash, and it talks about that. So 6 years forward in my New Zealand police career, I pulled up Flash. It just came up on my iMac. I'm like, wow, I should give this poem away, this experience of being, you know, with the baboons. And so I Googled publishers. So you Google publishers and you get like, I don't know, 150,000 different publishers around the world. So I'm like, oh, this is no good. Like, who do I send it to? Because I just wanted to give it away. I thought it was a good story.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, you know, I'm a praying man by then. So I literally just stopped, closed my eyes, I see God. There's so many publishers, I don't know who to send it to, but if you show me an African elephant, so not an Indian elephant, because there's a difference. But so I always test. I'm terrible, eh? I always put them to the test. Like, don't give me just any elephant. I want an African elephant. And if you give me one, I'll send it to that. So I went to a few pages. This is the old days of dial-up, you know. So like, click on the arrow and had to wait like 2 minutes, and then the next page.
I've been through that.
Yeah,
people don't understand that.
No. And then I clicked on the link, like 5th down, and boom, up came an African elephant. And so I went down to and it was a book by HarperCollins. who are very well known. Penguin, HarperCollins, Random Publishing, they're the top ones. So I went down to that link, I clicked on it, and there was inquiries or admin at HarperCollins. So I just clicked on that and I just said a few sentences. I said, hi, I'm a cop in West Auckland. I'm not an author, but I've written this poem. And if you can use it in any way you want, just use it. I think it'll be good. And I sent it. The next day I get a phone call. Well, it's a recorded message. Hi, my name is Lorraine Day from HarperCollins Publishing, and I've just read your story on the baboons. And she said, I don't know how I got it because we don't receive unsolicited emails. They must have like a rule.
Yep.
She said, we receive manuscripts. Like we deal with big publishers, and I'd like to see you. I'm in Auckland. I didn't even know they were in Auckland. And so I went and saw her, and she asked me, she said, tell me about your life. And I'm like, well, this is it, a little bit about what we shared today, and this is my experience. And she said, that's the most amazing thing I've ever read, and I'd like to offer you a book deal.
No way.
Yeah. And I said, well, okay, what does that involve? Like, how do I write a book? I didn't know how to write a book. So they gave me a mentor.
Yep.
And basically they wanted me to write a book on my life, but at that time I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to put myself forward, I didn't want to write about myself, and so they asked me, well, what do you think you'd like to write on? And I said, well, in my short time of policing, which was around 10 years by then, or 7 to 10 years, the main problem I see with the community is lack of parenting. I see these young men and women, young kids, and lack of role models, lack of examples. And so I thought, well, if I really want to write a book, I want to write something that means something. And that's fatality to an author, in those days. Like, if you want to write about sex and, blimmin', I don't know, what do you call it? 40 Shades of Grey or whatever. If you, like, here's me wanting to write about something that means something.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book around parenting. It went bestsellers in the first month. It was on number 2 in New Zealand. There were some other very popular authors as well, writing about how to grow good boys or growing good men. Celia Lashlie, God bless her soul, who's passed now, she had a great book on, what makes young boys tick. So she was the first Māori warden for the prison. So she had a lot of insight into criminality, and so she was always a bestseller. And that's how I became an author. So I wrote a book over 9 months, did all the touring and TV shows and whatnot, which resulted in I had a radio show. I was offered a radio show on a Pacific network, which is one of the popular youth, R&B, hip hop, gospel channels. So that led into that. So now I'm writing. I'm in the middle of 3 books now. So a children's book, which I've actually finished, which talks about children's struggles at school. So it addresses bullying, addresses isolation, addresses cultural diversity, and that's one that I've actually finished. But I'm looking for an illustrator if anyone's out there who can help me with the illustrations, and that one's ready to go. The second one is a revised Streetwise parenting, because when I wrote Streetwise, we never had iPhones and social media.
Yeah, exactly.
So I couldn't write about the threats of sexting and Snapchats and all that sort of stuff, and all the nasty stuff that social media is great, but it has an underbelly side as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then the third one is called Cops and Angels. So Cops and Angels is about times when, as a police officer, you go to a lot of stuff where you've got a ghastly scene, you've got a horrible situation, you've got kids standing in glass, you've got blood most of the time, you've got crisis. And so this book is going to be about when an offender showed up at that scene, you had the scene environment, you had a victim at that scene, but also times when I believe God showed up as well, or an angel. And I've got dozens and dozens of times when I've been in a situation like that, when something happened or something occurred where I just knew it wasn't, it was just an added element there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And then you moved to Australia and became a police officer here as well.
Yeah, it was too cold in New Zealand, man.
Yeah, okay.
My kids. I have 4 kids, and they were my oldest was asthmatic, like me.
Yep.
But then mine was cold-induced asthma, so he had it too. So I said to my wife, we got to go warmer. So we've moved to the Gold Coast 10 years ago, and he still has an inhaler, but he's basically stopped having asthma on a daily. And my kids play sport, play footy, and my little girl's playing OzTag, and it's just a beautiful place to live.
Yeah, it is a beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
And mate, just closing up, you've got your little Club 100. What's that? It's your fitness group.
Oh, yeah. So Club 100
That's how we met.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Club 100 is just something that I set up to encourage people to fitness. A lot of people can't, because of their work, train with someone else, or they might be doing nights. So it's just a platform to, you can put up your workout to encourage someone else.
Yep.
So the whole thing is that you throw it up. I call like the 1-step rule. Wherever you are in life, you're always 1 step ahead of someone, and not in a proud sense. But let's say you and I, we're able-bodied. We're 1 step from someone who maybe isn't, yet wants to do fitness as well. So I post for those who may not be able to do what I do, to be encouraged to do what they can do. Yeah. So it's and it's going really well. Like a lot of people up there throwing their things from all over. New Zealand, some from Fiji, America. So yeah, it's just a way towards better health.
And that's a Facebook group, isn't it?
That's a Facebook group. Yeah,
nice. Glenn, it's been absolutely awesome talking to you. You are someone who has, God, I don't even know what word to use right now. You've done everything and have a massive amount of belief, which is what I love about you. When I speak to you, I just feel really empowered. When you leave, I just think like I can do more. And I just want to say thanks for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you've done some really amazing things, and I hope the next person who podcasts with you gets a few more Uganda stories out of you, because some of the ones you talked about earlier were horrific, and the world needs to know that's happening. We live in a bubble. We have no idea. We complain about being locked down, you know what I mean? And you start talking about neck lacing and all the things you talked about before, like that's a lockdown.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, and just in leaving with the listeners, with yourself and with yourself, Ash, is that the key that I've found to continue doing what you're doing, even though you're seeing the stuff, and it's 2 things. One is that we go through really hard times, rough times. And I learnt this actually in doing the sergeant's papers that I had to do 5 years ago to become a sergeant, is that the learning was called Management Development Program. And to be a good leader, or to be a leader, is you have to have reached a point where everything you've been through, you then take that and then you do something about it.
Yep.
But those who haven't led yet, or are still, I guess, hidden leaders, are people who are still dealing with it. So they're still dealing with the harm and the trauma they've seen, and they're frozen in it, and they don't know how to translate it through to the next. So I'm just blessed and happy that I was able to, absorb it, get down. It's not bad or sad, and being down about something, but don't get down too long. It's fine to be down about a relationship breakdown or business failure or a book that's didn't sell anything, whatever. Any disappointment, but don't get down too long. Pick yourself back up,
Good words.
And lastly, just be grateful. Every day that I drive to work, or I drove here, I talk. My self-talk is, I start saying, I thank you for this, and I thank God for everything that I have. I thank God that I have 2 legs. I thank God that I have health and gratefulness. Once you lose gratefulness, you start to moan and, be a problem.
I'm a massive fan of being grateful.
Yeah.
Massive fan.
All right.
Every morning, first thing.
Yeah.
That's my play.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me, Greg.
Mate, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was, so if you want to catch up with Glenn, Facebook, Hope Village, that's the mental health platform, Facebook page. Yep. Club 100 and Facebook group is where people can come and get some training advice and just throw their ideas around about training and not feel safe about training.
Yep.
And if you want Glenn's book, Streetwise Parenting, published 2009 by HarperCollins, get on board. You've been a busy man.
Thank you.
I love it.